All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to Oscar week. Believe it or not, it's almost here. Almost time for the Academy Awards to finally be handed out. Let's see, I just looked over ballots. Final ballots for voters were due today, so really, it's getting down to crunch time now. So it's a time, you know. We're looking at just a few days here, and then the whole award season, which has been a rough one for me, will finally come to an end. Now, I looked through my predictions again this year, just at a general gauge here. I missed the for the Globes. I missed Best Picture Drama. I got the comedy one right. I missed the Critics' Choice for Best Film. I missed BAFTA for Best Film, and I missed SAG for Outstanding Ensemble. I got DGA right, and I missed both of the WGA awards. We might get to them here in a second here, but yeah, it's not been a great season for me predicting wise. I've gotten a few of the acting categories right here and there. Um, I think for the most part, I've stuck with Mahershala Ali winning all the way. Well, as far as the actual awards go, as far as early calls, yeah, I didn't really, the Christian Bale thing didn't quite work. Regina King is still up in the air. That's not 100% done yet, but could happen. Um, I think I was pretty early on with Black Klansman for adapted screenplays, so I think that one probably will work out even without the WGA win. Um, yeah, yeah, okay. So really, what I'm doing here today is, as you can see from the title of the video, is we're looking at the up in the air categories here, the troublesome categories you might call them, the ones that you lose sleep over, the ones that you really it's either a coin toss category, big time coin toss, or you just feel like I don't know, you might just like I've been saying here, you might just put five names, or depending on the category, three names, or 10 or not, 8 names, however many is the best picture this year, and you just throw a dart, and whichever one it lands on, you just say, okay, that's the one I'm picking. So yeah, there's four categories I'm really going to highlight here today, and then yeah, we'll get to the final predictions here later on in the week. But for now, I just wanted to get a little bit of a placeholder here, something to kind of hold over until we get to there, because there's a few categories I'm still like these four especially are ones I might flip flop on through the week. The other 20 categories I'm solid enough on to say that I'm not 100% going to stick with them, but like 90% I'll probably stick with them. I mean, if I hear something in the wind in the next 2 days or so that makes me say, okay, well, it's probably not that one, it's probably that one, then I'll let you know before the final predictions. But otherwise, I think the other 20 I'm solid enough on to say I'm not going to lose sleep over them anytime soon. Okay, so yeah, the first category I have pinpointed here is actually the one of only two categories in the top 8 categories, if you will, the screenplays, directing, acting, and picture categories. That I'm just two of those 8 categories are ones I'm still kind of worried about. The first one is supporting actress. Yeah, we've been everybody really in the space here has been talking about it all season long since the BAFTA and the SAG nominations came out, and that is Regina King this year's Sylvester Stallone? Is this a case where losing the BAFTA and SAG nods, not even getting nominated there, let alone winning, of course, is that enough for you to lose the Oscar, even if you've been lauded by all the critics' prizes, you've won the Globe, you've won Critics' Choice? Yeah. Now, obviously, as we've been talking about, there's a whole bunch of comparisons between this year's race and that year's race. King won SAG, or excuse me, won the Globe and won Critics' Choice. So did Sylvester Stallone. Missed out on SAG and BAFTA nominations. So did Sylvester Stallone. At SAG, a non-Oscar nominee, Emily Blunt this year, wins, and it was Idris Elba 3 years ago. And then we have a British kind of mainstay, if you will, win at BAFTA. Of course, it was future Oscar winner Mark Rylance 3 years ago, and this year, of course, it's Rachel Weisz for The Favorite. And The Favorite, I'll tell you what, it feels like a film, especially here in the last couple weeks, it feels like a film that now has more buzz on it than it did 3 weeks earlier. I think almost all of that is 100% due to its wins at BAFTA, obviously. There's also, a pretty good campaign going with that film, all in favor, I've seen that around, which is, fine. And then, there's also an argument, that if you want a female perspective film to win, look at this one, especially if you get into the story aspects of it. Three women who are not really the monogamous type when it comes to their sexual preferences. I don't want to, I think most everybody who wants to see the film has seen it, but yeah, that's something else. I think a few people are talking about there as well. Obviously, for especially the Best Picture race, you make the same argument for Roma, which the two most important characters in the film are female. Pretty much every male character in the film is a bag of shit. So yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, pretty much, except the kids. I mean, we'll put them separate from that, but they're just being kids. But anyways, yeah. So obviously, if this kind of big bump on the favorite comes just as final voting is beginning and ending right after Rachel Weisz wins in a big way at BAFTA, obviously all that momentum can carry over. And as we've talked about, the favorite is a Best Picture nominee. If Beale Street Could Talk is not. Now, I mean, right now I could probably say, yeah, that puts a lot more a lot more points into Rachel's corner for her win, and less away from Regina. But for now, predicting wise, I am sticking with Regina for two reasons. Number one is personal for me, and that is one of those early calls I made has to come true, right? Anyways, yeah, that's not a particularly good reason, but whatever. I was hoping Christian Bale would come through and all that. He didn't. Rami Malek now looks like he's running the board in that category. Early-ish prediction for me, I kind of got on the bandwagon a week or two after it had started. That was Spike Lee for director. Obviously, that looks like that's not going to pan out. First Man for Best Picture obviously faded away, and then I went over to Beale Street, and yeah, so that's been a little bit of a that didn't happen thing. Let's see, who was my early bet for actress? Oh yeah, Saoirse Ronan. Yeah, obviously she didn't make it. And supporting actor was somebody who did make it in. That was probably the guy who's least likely to win it. That's Sam Rockwell. But Regina, I did have from the start. Pretty much from the first teaser trailer of Beale Street, when that came out, I was like, Regina's winning. And it might come true, it might not. But I think a lot of us last year were right on the money early on with Gary Oldman, of course. That was more, obviously became an easier and easier call as the season went on. But, yeah, I don't know. And I was relatively early on the Guillermo del Toro train for him winning director. A lot of people had Chris Nolan early on, but I don't know. We won't dwell on last season too much. But, yeah, that's part of my thinking there. The other one, of course, is the big key difference, as we've said, the two scenarios have been playing out almost exactly. The big difference, though, for Regina versus Stallone is Creed only had the one nomination for supporting actor. Beale Street has two nominations in other categories, and it's also a film, as we mentioned, much more on the Oscar radar than Creed was at the time. And in a way, this feels like a big way to award the film. It feels like one that people have looked back and said, yeah, that was left over for Best Picture, myself included. I came late onto the film. It didn't open until later. Once I saw it, though, I was like, yeah, this 100% should be in the Oscar race for picture, for director, arguably. He did a great job, but it's a great year for directors, though. Yeah. Definitely for lead actress, could have been made in there for Kiki Lane. We talked about that last time. Stephan James, potentially. Obviously, Regina was going to get in, yeah. The screenplay is great. I mean, the cinematography is gorgeous, well edited, and the score is fantastic. Yeah, it's one that I think people collectively have said is overlooked. So that usually that's some benefits in your favor there. And also another key big difference is the Critics Awards. Almost virtually every big Critics Award for supporting actress this year went to Regina King. Mark Rylance, when he won for Bridge of Spies in that big upset, obviously the big thing that helped him was BAFTA. Also, his film was up for a Best Picture the same way that The Favorite is, as we mentioned, for Rachel Weisz. And it was also his first nomination. This is Regina's first nomination. Rachel has already won before. It was a few years ago in this same category. Yeah, I think the main thing I was going with there is the Critics Prizes. Mark Rylance picked up a lot of Critics Prizes that year for Bridge of Spies. Not all of them. Idris Elba had his fair share. Oh God, who else? Michael Keaton picked up a couple. I think one of those was like lead actor at the New York Film Festival or New York Awards or something like that. Trying to think, who else was in it? Michael Shannon won his fair share. Yeah, that one was kind of not a sweep year the same way that we had this year with Regina and those Critics Prizes, but Rylance won his fair share there. So again, for the moment, I'm sticking with Regina here, but I don't know. Later on this week, I might switch over to Rachel. Okay, the next one is original screenplay. Now, WGA, we haven't talked about it yet. Man, I just suck at predicting this year. I just do. We had a major upset. Now, the 8th grade one for original screenplay is the one that I'm kicking myself in the foot for. I had it, as I mentioned in my video there, 3rd place. Vice I had in 2nd place just because it did have the Oscar nod over 8th grade. But I said, 8th grade, the DGA win. I mean, that showed that the guilds liked it a lot. It's won a ton of stuff for Bo Burnham and for Elsie Fisher for like best newcomers and best first time directors and all that. So it just felt like it was going to happen. A slight part of me did. And you noticed if you did in the video there, I paused for a moment afterwards. In my mind, I was thinking, obviously, I'd already written the piece for Cultured Vultures, so it'd be very unprofessional if I went over to YouTube and said, no, I'm going to switch it, and then come back later and write a follow up piece on Cultured Vultures and say, yeah, I actually switched. Yeah, and I didn't tell you guys. Thanks. yeah, that's not very professional. But seriously, I had an in that moment, and and afterwards and before, I was like, damn, I should have picked 8th grade, and it happened. It happened, yeah. And his acceptance speech, from what or just the bits of it I saw, like good luck at the Oscars, losers. That was awesome. Anyways, but yeah, I think obviously since 8th grade is not nominated at the Oscars, that really clears the field for something like The Favorite or First Reformed, which were not nominated by WGA. And it feels like Green Book has really lost steam here in that race, and not to be too surprising, I guess, since one of the big co-writers on the film has been, arguably, of the controversies around Green Book, the multiple controversies we've had, the one that has stuck the most, the one that has really, kind of the sword in the side moment, has been the anti-Muslim tweet from Nick Vallelonga. That was kind of surfaced up a little over 2 months ago now, I think, was when that started, something like that. So, or no, that was right after the Globe one. Yeah, so it was a month and a half, whatever. But I think that's been the biggest criticism, I think, of, if you consider them criticisms, that the film has taken on. And, it won the Globe, but it has lost everywhere since. Yeah, so that really leaves it down to The Favorite. I think First Reformed is one. I haven't seen the film, but that, for whatever reason, that one right now feels right. That one feels right. I don't know how I can explain it, but it won a ton of critics' prizes going into the season before the Oscar nominations came out. The writer in the film, of course, Paul Schrader, even though he had a small controversy, but that feels like it's washed away, especially after Kevin Spacey came back out and now he's, arguably, if you want to say it this way, at that point, he was less taboo than he is now, but whatever, that's not neither here nor there. That criticism seems to have washed off a little bit. And I think Schrader, as we mentioned, at the big Academy meetup where they take the class photograph and all that, when he was acknowledged, there was pretty much I don't know if it was confirmed standing O, but it was pretty much like everybody in the room really acknowledged him. So, you look at it, a lot of the nominees this year are voting members of the Academy, of course. And I think that video is up on YouTube. I don't know how many hits it's gotten, but I'm sure it's had its fair share of hits too. And this guy's a legend. I mean, he wrote 2 of Scorsese's, arguably his best films in Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. So this is a guy who's had his first nomination coming for a long time. And it's a year where pretty much every different award show that has a screenplay prize has given it to somebody else. First Reformed had Critics' Choice. Globes had Green Book. WGA went with 8th grade. And BAFTA went with The Favorite. So even though The Favorite, yes, is coming off of this big high off of BAFTA, I think just because the film did so well at BAFTA, and because it is, British set, lots of British stars, and particularly British stars in the film, I feel like that's going to be explained away. As we mentioned, if the favorite was really this strong, it really would have won at all these other awards, and that's, kind of my hammer down moment here, the thing that really caught me, that said, okay, I'm going to go with First Reformed, at least for the moment. And that is that whenever First Reformed has been nominated at one of these big award shows, so far the only big one has been Critics' Choice, it's won every time. And it's won all these Critics' Prizes. Whenever First Reformed was not there, something else won. Obviously, I guess that obviously it has to make sense, but we haven't seen a consistent winner among those places where First Reformed was not nominated. So that for me kind of sealed the deal kind of moment when I thought about it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So that's what I'm going with for now. Again, I might change my pick later. The favorite is definitely the other one that I'm considering. I think Green Book has now moved down to third place in that respective race. If something like Roma or something weird like that had won at WGA or Vice, then I probably would have gone with them. But I don't know. Right now, I just have I just have one of those feelings, and it's kind of a gut instinct kind of feeling. Either you go with it or you just avoid it, but, whatever. Okay, the next one is actually one of the sound categories. We're going clear down to the sound category next. I think a lot of you guys, the historians among you, know that BAFTA, with the exception of The Revenant and Casino Royale in recent years, pretty much whoever wins Best Sound over there goes on to win at least one of the sound categories at the Oscars. And, it seems, Bohemian Rhapsody won over there for Best Sound, and it's up for both categories. So, logistically, it would win one of those. And I think sound mixing is definitely the place it would go. It won the top prize at the Guild for sound mixers, and it actually came away, surprisingly, if you will, with two big wins at the MPSE, which is the Motion Picture Sound Editors Guild. And one for, let's see here, I had them written down here, musical editing and dialogue ADR editing. So it could take the sound editing award too, but I'm actually not thinking so. I think, the big award winner there at MPSE for Foley effects, which is kind of the sound effects editing, which was what the original category was called here, was A Quiet Place. And again, looking at all the guilds this year, A Quiet Place has been one that has not been overlooked, really. It has the one Oscar nomination. It was up for score at Globes, had a big win for horror film at Critics' Choice, otherwise had a couple other nominations. Big win at SAG, big upset win for Emily Blunt, supporting actress. I think BAFTA was really the only place that didn't have a nomination anywhere, I don't think. Double check that really quick, but and obviously that's kind of not to say location wise, but that feels like a tougher sell for BAFTA to me. No, okay, it was up for sound over there. Okay, and it lost. Yeah, that's fine. But Bo Rap, I guess. Yeah, that was kind of more their cup of tea. But anyways, so I think after that win, and First Man was my previous pick here. I don't know, it just feels like even in the other big category that First Man could strike in is visual effects. That's the last category here for today. It feels like its strength in that category is waning too. So with the big Foley effects win for A Quiet Place, I'm thinking Quiet Place here. I am for this category right now. And I think it will be that. Bo Rap could easily surprise us and win here for both the sound categories. I don't quite think so. I think sound mixing, acting, potentially editing is another one. I was going to include it here, but I looked at it over again. I'm like, nah, it feels like Vice. And we talked about it last time with Vice for best editing because Ace Eddie, usually when they get it wrong, it's kind of with those upset wins at the actual guild, and it's like the more likely one goes on to win, like Gravity, the year of Captain Phillips, Whiplash won the year of Boyhood, and so on and so forth. So Vice feels like a more obvious choice, I think, in that category, respectively, at least in my opinion. But I just feel like Quiet Place probably here for this one. But I was talking about Bo Rap. I think editing it did win the Ace Eddie for dramatic editing, but yeah, if I think if it had sealed the deal with a BAFTA win for editing, yeah, I would have done it. But it feels like actor sound mixing right now, which pretty much is the. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those are the two categories that Ray won, right? Or did Ray win something else? I think. I think those are the only two, right? Or did it pick up? Yeah, it was just those two. There you go. So yeah, it feels like that's the way it's gonna go. And actually, it won just those two awards at BAFTA too, which I think the same thing happened with Bo Rap this year. I think, or did Bo Rap win another one? Yeah, just those two. But there you go, same pattern. Okay, so next up is visual effects. As we mentioned, I think First Man is waning in this category, but I think, and I might have made a mistake last time. I said when no superhero film has ever won this category. Actually, Spider-Man 2 won this in 2004. And the original, if you count it, it wasn't a competitive category, but they had a special award for Superman back in '78 for its visual effects, breakthrough visual effects, and everything. So 2 out of what do we get? Close to 100 superhero films nominated. I'm exaggerating there, of course. It's probably close to like 25 or something. Have won, so the odds are not really in Avengers' favor. And we did have the Visual Effects Society, which has leading effects or more effects, and then they have supporting effects. I forget it's like effects driven. That's what they call it. Yeah, Avengers did win at the for the effects driven category. I think largely, and again, probably will play out at the Oscars too because of Black Panther's absence there. We did see Black Panther win for visual effects, and the other two big precursors that are televised, BAFTA and Critics' Choice. So, in a way, if you want to vote for Black Panther in this category, the way to do it is to vote for Avengers because Black Panther's in it. And Wakanda obviously is a big set piece for Avengers: Infinity War. I hope that's not a spoiler for any of you kickers out there. But it feels like. Right now, First Man, obviously my big argument for it is that it's the most Best Picture-esque nominee of the 5, and it's the only one of the 5 that has nominations in other categories. The rest of the other 4 are only up for visual effects by itself, which traditionally doesn't help you. I mean, even Spider-Man 2 that year, I think was up for one of the sound categories, or both sound categories, if I remember right. And I know Superman was up for, the original Superman was up for score and editing and I think a couple other things. But, where is, let's see here, list here. Okay, it was up for both sound categories, yeah. So that's kind of proof in the pudding there when you look at that. But it's been a kind of a weirdish year in this category, especially with Black Panther. Oh, it's up here and then it misses here. But it wins here, but then it's not nominated. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing here. So, for now, my prediction does stay on First Man, but I might just be swayed later on by Avengers here. I mean, it is the most effects in the film of the 5 category of the 5 nominees. I think this or arguably Ready Player One, but it feels like that one feels like it's way out to lunch as far as the win goes. I don't know. Maybe that would be a weird upset win. It's Spielberg's obviously got his name on it. His films traditionally don't win this category either, though. That's right. Not all the time. God, I'm trying to think back. Has any... I mean, E.T. and, even Close Encounters that year lost out to Star Wars, of course, but I think E.T.'s been the only one that's won visual effects for one of his films. Unless, Jurassic Park probably did that year. Did they even have a visual effects category? Yeah, they had to have. Yeah. So a couple times, but it's like... Those are the more obvious, kind of picks, for those years. It just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like an obvious one for Ready Player One, so I'll probably write that one off. It's more of a two-way race here. But, I'm keeping with First Man for now. But I could easily be swayed by Avengers there. Okay, so as I mentioned, those are the 4 categories there that I'm really, when it comes down to crunch time, I'm just gonna have to pick one and just take it, or either take the loss or luck out and get the win. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like especially the screenplay and the sound editing one, those are the crazy picks. I don't know if they'll come through or not, but yeah. Anyways, so yeah, Again, I feel like I need a win here at the Oscars for this award season. I've just been so, I mean, not wrong-headed, but I've just gotten so many of these calls missed over and over and over again for a lot of these award shows. Some of them more obvious than others. Like I think Black Panther was leading the polls by the end of the SAG race, especially on like Gold Derby and stuff. Roma for Best Film at Critics' Choice, that should have been a more obvious one. I don't know who could have seen Bo Rap coming for dramatic film except at the Globes, except for my mother, who just loved the movie so much. I don't know. Some of these are more obvious than others. I don't know who could have called the PGA win for Green Book, especially when that was at the height of its controversial matters there. Not a few people did, I guess, but not a ton. The DGA one, was probably the most obvious call so far this season. And we admittedly, even though I went with everybody else with the BAFTA thing for the favorite for best film, there was a lot of evidence that Roma could still pull it off. And when it did, I was like, I should have gotten that one. Oh well. Well, yeah. We got one more shot here for trying to predict these correctly. So so I hope I get some of these right. I will come back later on in the week for sure with final predictions, and we will go ahead and just hope that everything just works out. All right. Not a ton of stuff for this one here. We'll just cut it off here, and we will be back later on in the week.